Hello again. I'm Braddock Supervisor John Cook. Welcome back to Braddock Neighborhood News, the program I am using to provide you with information on issues facing our community and ideas on how we can strengthen our neighborhoods. Fairfax County has over 5,000 miles of roadways and 700 miles of trails within its boundaries. Motorists and bicyclists share our roads, and our trails are used for recreation, transportation, and exercise. Today, I'm pleased to have as my guest Bruce Wright, the chairman of Fairfax Advocates for Better Bicycling, or FAB, as well as Second Lieutenant E. Ivansick with the Fairfax County Police Department's Neighborhood Patrol Unit, to talk about how we can be safer and more lawful when it comes to bikes. Bruce, Lieutenant, thanks for coming on the show today.
All right, thank you.
I appreciate having you here. Bruce, tell us a little bit about FAB.
Well, FAB was formed back in 2005. There was a group of us that got together and wanted to focus advocacy on bicycling to try to make Fairfax a more bike-friendly community. And we've been meeting ever since. We meet once a month at the Vienna Public Library. And we also have the typical website, social media, Facebook, and a blog and Twitter and all those things. And we work closely with the county. We work closely with VDOT engineers in looking at road projects and making sure that there's good access for bicycling.
And that's really a topic. More and more people are riding bikes. And Lieutenant, tell us a little bit about, from the police department's perspective, what are you seeing? Let's start with the roads. We'll get the trails in a bit. What do you see on the roads with bikes, and what are kind of the issues at the forefront of your mind?
I think one of the biggest issues is just people's distraction while driving. People have a hard time paying attention to cars, let alone bicyclists, and it can be a real issue for people like Bruce and other people that are trying to safely use the road with a bicycle.
Right. So we need to be mindful. Of course, the law is that a bicycle on the road is just like a car, right? From a standpoint of obeying traffic and also getting the respect that you give other drivers.
Yeah. So for the law's sake, a bicycle is classified as a vehicle, and a bicyclist must signal their stops and their turns and obey all the rules of the road, just like a motor vehicle would.
Do we see a lot of accidents? Are you seeing them go up and down? Are we pretty safe on our roads? How are we doing?
I think overall there's an increase in accidents, especially with pedestrians, and less with bicyclists, luckily. But vehicles versus pedestrians is definitely up a little bit, and we're definitely trying to get the awareness out there.
Bruce, I know it's one of the things you guys talk about is safety on the roads.
We do, yeah. We work with cyclists to try to ensure they know all the rules of the road and to encourage them to follow the rules. We know that we need to stop and signal and do all those things. And we do have a right to riding in the road, and not all motorists understand that. And one of the issues that we found is that on a regular lane in Fairfax, which is about 12 feet, it's not possible to share that lane with a motorist. And so cyclists can ride a little bit further out into the road to ensure that motorists don't try to pass them too closely. And a lot of motorists don't understand that, and occasionally will harass cyclists. We also see some issues at intersections, and this is where most of the conflict happens. And I live near the Wheelie Metro Station, and there's a tremendous increase in pedestrians and bicyclists around that station. And one of the big problems is not only distracted motorists, but motorists who aren't stopping for red lights when they turn right on red. And it's become epidemic, I think, in the county. And it's a really hard problem to solve, especially in an area where it's difficult for one officer to observe and then pull someone over. So education's got to be a huge part of that for motorists and bicyclists.
Yeah, that right on red issue, I know. It's, in some ways, when you're a pedestrian, if you're a smart pedestrian, you know that even though you have the right of way, you always looking over your shoulder at that right turn.
That's right.
It's a little harder on a bike in some ways, because once you sort of committed, I guess.
Well, it is, but I'll tell you, one of the things that I do is I carry a whistle, and to try to make eye contact, like you said, but I also try to get the motorist's attention, because they're looking left, and if I'm coming from the right, and at Wheelie this happens, they don't always look, they almost never look right, and so that's one way to get their attention.
Lieutenant, do you see the right on red issues in greater prominence?
Oh, I do. As a bicyclist myself, I've experienced some of the same things that Bruce explains. I think that as a bicyclist, though, you feel that vulnerability, and so you're much more aware of the potential for a hazard and the potential for danger. Unfortunately, people feel safe and they feel indestructible inside a vehicle, and I think they're a little more haphazard in their behavior sometimes. Along those lines, Bruce has partnered with the police department to strengthen legislation to make it safer for bicyclists in that matter.
Yeah, there are a couple of laws this year that were passed. Our group, as well as the statewide Virginia Bicycling Federation, worked with legislators to pass at least 2 new laws that I'm aware of. One is to allow motorists to be able to pass a bicyclist where there's that narrow lane and the bicyclist is out in the lane. If there's a double yellow line, it used to be, or it is, illegal for a motorist to pass across that yellow line. The new law says if you're behind a bicyclist and it's clear, you can pass. It happens all the time. I mean, it's basically acknowledging what happens, but we think that's a really good change in the law. And another is, it used to be a motorist couldn't tailgate another motorist, but it said nothing about tailgating a bicyclist. And I know I've been tailgated before, especially where someone thinks I don't belong in the road, so that law was changed. So it's generic. A motorist can't tailgate another vehicle, not just a motorist.
And of course, we don't have any tailgating here in Fairfax, do we?
No, sir.
But in many ways, that is a bigger problem on the bike. I mean, if you tap a fender, usually, although not always, it's not catastrophic, but you tap a bicycle and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, and we've had some encounters with angry motorists, and we know in this area there's a lot of road rage, and so we've just got to be very careful and be safe, and we're advocating for better facilities for cyclists so that we don't compete as much, especially during rush hour on some of our busier roads. And the county is making good progress. Yeah,
and I want to talk about trails in a minute because you're right, especially in rush hour, even on let's say you've got a 4-lane road, 2 lanes in each direction, our roads can get pretty full. And if you've got somewhat of an incline and you've got a bicyclist who's going 5 miles an hour and you got a string of cars trying to go 40, that could be a cause of conflict.
Yeah, it can.
Something's got to give.
Yeah.
Right. So, Well, Bruce, what do you do in that circumstance? I mean, what does your group tell bicyclists? Should they just keep chugging along, or do you say, hey, look, if you've got an uphill stretch, look for a trail, or do you just, what's the advice?
Yeah, the response to that is we would love to have not segregated, but separate facilities that are safe for us, but we don't have those in most of the county. So in order for us to use our bikes for transportation, there's usually some part of our trip that is on a road like that. And so we tell cyclists, we actually do some training to have them try to appear big in that lane so that they are seen. And if motorists have to slow down, that's unfortunate, but it happens. Now, we also say if there's a long line of cars, be smart. If there's a driveway, try to pull over, or if there's a trail, try to use the trail. But we do. A lot of times we don't have the option to be off the road, so we've got to deal with it, but we try to be reasonable about it as well.
And really, right, Lieutenant, I mean, so many problems, if people would use common sense, can get solved and dealt with, and instead of getting sort of literalistic. I mean, we do have to share the road, and I think Bruce's point is great about, hey, if you're on the bike and you're going real slow as a line of cars, pull over even though the law allows you to be that traveler.
Right.
Likewise, if you're that car driver, those 10 seconds are not vital to your life, right?
Right. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of legislation is kind of common sense based, like when a motorist is passing a bicyclist, they now are mandated to give 3 feet of space, between their vehicle and a bicyclist. It's unfortunate that has to be written in black and white. It seems to me like you would want to do that just out of common sense, but unfortunately, we have to make it black and white for some people.
Right. Well, so let's talk about the trail network, Bruce. And you've, as you said, you started out with the county as a citizen-involved person on the Trails and Sidewalks Committee. We do have a growing trail system. Trails are used for bikes. They're used for people to walk, to run, a whole lot of stuff. In an ideal world, we'd have trails next to every road. We know we can't get there, so tell us what's kind of going on in the trail situation.
Yeah, we do have a great network of trails. Unfortunately, they're not all connected. Back when I was chairman of the Trails and Sidewalks Committee, we started an effort to map all the trails, and it's impressive how many trails we have, but if you look at them on the map, you see where there are gaps. We have a couple of just first-class trails in the county. One is the W&OD Trail, the Washington Old Dominion, old railroad bed. It's a straight, flat trail that is, if you've ever been there on the weekend, you'll realize that most of the people in the county own a bike, and they're mostly out there on the trail. We also have the Mount Vernon Trail. Part of that trail is in the county on national park land generally, but that is the same kind of a deal. It's just very crowded. And one of our first advocacy efforts was to try to provide other facilities. Not only do we have road rage on the roads, we've got it on the trails now because they're just so crowded. We've got walkers, we've got dog walkers, strollers, rollerbladers, and bicyclists, some of which are trying to go much too fast on that trail. So we've tried to advocate to have them get out on the road. If they want to go fast, go on the road, but they need to feel safe to do so. So that's a big part of what we do, is try to get conditions that are safer on the road and on the trails for cyclists.
And as you know, part of what we try to do in the county, if we're going to do a road project and we can connect one of those gaps in the trail, we try to do that because that gives us the chance to do it. It's obviously less costly while you've got your trucks out there to do that connection than it is to try to go out and just do that. But it's going to take some time. We got a lot of connections.
We do. Now, one of the really good things, though, this summer, as part of the repaving project, the county finally has a fair amount of money for repaving. There are, I think, about 20 projects in which bike facilities, on-road bike facilities, are going to be created at no additional cost because some of those really wide lanes are being shrunk a little bit, and in some cases where we have too many lanes, they are being reduced and bike lanes are being added. And we've shown on Lawyers Road that we can do that and still have traffic flow and make the road safer for everybody.
Yeah, and as you know, we actually intentionally did that on the road in my district for speed purposes. We had cars going too fast, and so you can slow down cars with a visual effect of narrowing the lane, because we do have some of those, geez, I guess they're 25-foot wide roadways, and people use them like speedways, and that's something you don't like to see.
No, but sometimes it does keep us busy, that's for sure.
Are you referring to Wakefield Chapel?
Wakefield Chapel,
yeah,
right.
Well, and as part of the repaving project, apparently there are going to be shared lane markings on either end, where initially they couldn't put in bike lanes, and that'll help.
And that's a good point. We think that it's kind of easy to add something. It's not. We learned that on the Wakefield project. Okay. When you can't just go out there with paint. It's a little more complicated than that. And removing a paint lane damages the road surface and creates the crevice that water fills in the winter, and you get potholes. So the ideal time to do these changes are with a repaving project. And we're going to see in Wakefield, I think, will be beautiful. It's going to be newly paved. We're going to get not only the better paint job on the bike lanes that are there, but the shared road marks that we don't have right now.
Yeah, it should make a real difference. And there's the Wakefield Park on one end and Braddock Road, which is very busy, and then there's the college campus on the other end, and this will allow more people to be able to take short trips by bike in that area.
And if you want to get in shape, riding from Braddock to 236 on Wakefield Chapel on a bike, it's a steep hill.
It is.
And that'll do it real fast.
That's right. Well, Eric, you must be able to keep in shape.
I do have a unique
bike control.
I do have a unique opportunity to exercise while working, and it is a good opportunity that we take advantage of.
That's cool.
Tell us about how your unit works. How many officers are out biking, and kind of how do you use the bike when you're patrolling?
Sure. So each district, each police station has its own neighborhood patrol unit. And those units are typically comprised of anywhere between 4 and 8 officers and a supervisor. The West Springfield District Station currently has 4, and by the end of summer we'll have 6 officers on the neighborhood patrol unit. It's a really good opportunity to get on those trails that you mentioned, the 700 miles of trails, and to get deeper into the communities, into those neighborhoods, get into the areas where you can't really reach inside of a police car. And it's a good conversation starter with the residents a good way to kind of get to know some of those quality of life issues that are affecting the communities. And the Neighborhood Patrol Unit has a good opportunity to kind of spend some time, investigating and coming up with creative ways to deal with those issues.
I think that's a really important point. People sometimes don't think about where police officers are situated, before a call comes in. And we know some are used for speed enforcement, so they're in the car with the radar and that. But you guys are almost unique in that you're out, and because you're biking through the neighborhood, you can talk to people. You get a much better sense of what's happening by talking to people.
Yeah.
And you create those community connections. People like the idea of getting to know, I think, a community police officer and feeling that connection.
Yeah, people are always surprised when they see a police officer on a bike. Hopefully they'll be less and less surprised as we do this more and more often. But it does leave them with a good positive feeling, and it leaves us with a good positive feeling too. The fact that they like seeing us out there and we like being there. So.
What do you do in the winter?
In the winter, we keep the bikes locked up, and we stick to the police cars usually. But if the weather's not too bad, you can still ride a bike.
Yeah.
So you got to have spring training to get ready to go back out then. I would think that if you're out there for a full shift on a bike, that's a workout.
Yeah. Luckily, we don't normally do a full shift on a bike. We still use cars, so a bike is a tool that we have at our disposal. But it's a tool that we try to use on a pretty frequent basis.
That's good. Bruce, we were talking about trails and how we're trying to design connections and doing shared use paths and lanes. Mm-hmm. And that's all part of the bicycle master plan. You had a big role in that. We passed it on our board last year, I guess. Yes. And it really is a roadmap to kind of what we want to do over time in the county. Why don't you talk to us about that?
Yeah, it is. We started working with the county back in probably 2007, 2008. After the county produced the bicycle route map, I was saying earlier that you could see the gaps and where we really need better facilities. And I think that told us and the county bike coordinator at the time, Charlie Strunk, that we really need a plan to overcome these gaps and to create this network. And so it took probably, I guess, 4 or 5 years to complete that plan. I'm fortunate that I have a flexible schedule, and I was able to attend most of the meetings. And I probably attended 30 meetings during that time. And so I rode around the county with the excuse of going to a bicycle master plan meeting. That plan really does set the roadmap, as you said, not only for facilities on the ground, but also for policies and programs. We can have the best network of trails, but if people don't think about riding their bike for a short trip, if they just normally get in their car and go somewhere, they're not going to change their attitudes. And in a suburban community like ours, it's important that people are encouraged to use other modes of transportation. So encouragement and education are also part of the plan. As well as providing recommendations for more resources for the bicycle program so that they can conduct some of these programs. And traffic enforcement as well is a major part of it. It all kind of works together, and the plan really does outline a lot of good opportunities for the county over the next 5 years.
It's created some good dialogue. I know when we're doing smaller sort of road construction projects, and we're really now focused on the trail connections and the bikes and the walking, and how important that is. I mean, I'm just thinking of the neighborhoods in my district where the thought of walking or biking to the grocery store, you couldn't do it just because it couldn't really get there, or the sidewalk wasn't right, or there wasn't a trail, and now we're starting to think in terms of, okay, if we're going to do a project that's supposed to last 10 or 20 or 30 years, how can we make it so people can get to that grocery store that you can see? It's close enough to see it, but you can't get there without driving, and that helps us with our road transportation issues because it gets some of those cars off the road.
Yeah, it does. A lot more people we've talked to want to be able to ride and walk and live in walkable communities. And as our county matures, we've got more opportunities to do that as we get a little bit more dense and there's more retail close by. we've seen just an explosion of people biking, at least in my area, especially near the Silver Line, even in Tyson's, where I was on the Tyson's Land Use Task Force, and there's a real transformation going on there, and bikes are part of it. And I'm sure the police have and having bike patrols there in Tyson's would probably be a great way to control some of that.
Oh yeah, we have 2 different teams in Tyson's, and they're very busy. We could have 3, and they still probably wouldn't be enough.
And probably will be once as Tyson's continues to grow. And it's funny, when I grew up in a small town, and when you're a kid, you didn't have a car, you had a bike, and you rode it everywhere. But you could do it because you didn't have the density. But it's not only hard, but it can be dangerous here if you don't have the proper trails or the connections or the lane or what have you. So the last thing we want is dangerous riding or walking. So that's really, I think, part of the importance of looking at the structure of the road and of the trails, so that we're encouraging, obviously it's good physical activity and it's fun, but we're encouraging safe activity where we couldn't before because we didn't have the infrastructure.
That's right, and education is a big part of it, both for motorists and for cyclists, so that they know what's safe behavior, and so that motorists know to expect to see more bicyclists now as we grow as a community.
And all learning. We talked a little bit earlier about the road rage, and we really all got to learn to calm down a bit around here.
I think so. I don't know the answer to that, though.
Well, we'll keep working on that. Hey, bike rodeos. Bit of a change of a subject, but
Sure.
Tell me about bike rodeos.
So that would be one tool that the Neighborhood Patrol Unit uses to foster a relationship with the community. We work closely with groups like boys clubs and girls clubs and the Girl Scouts, and we'll put on what we call a bike rodeo, and it's just a time for people to come out of the neighborhood, for those agencies and those organizations to come out, have their bicycles checked over for any obvious safety issues, have their helmets checked to make sure they fit, make sure that they're safe and proper. We set up usually about a half a dozen cone courses. We'll demonstrate some skills and how to safely negotiate those cone courses, and give the kids an opportunity to do them themselves. And it's a real confidence booster for the kids. You can see by the end of the day, they've done some things that they didn't think that they could do at the beginning of the day. It's a pretty neat opportunity.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago we had one at Lake Braddock. I'm not sure if it was a rodeo or a bike day, but Bruce, I remember talking to you there, and your folks were there, and a lot of kids come out and adults come out for these opportunities.
Yeah, they are really a good educational opportunity. Our group has worked with encouraging more kids to bike to school, and Bike to School Day has just taken off. And a critical part of that is making sure that those kids know how to bike properly. Now, as I recall, police were in the schools more than they are now in the elementary schools. I think there was a school education officers were cut. That force was cut a few years back, and I don't know that they've been reinstated. And so that's one of the things that we're hoping will happen, is that the schools will continue to, or will start teaching kids safe bicycling habits. And they're slowly getting there. There's a Safe Routes to School coordinator in the schools, and she's doing a great job, and I'm sure she's working closely with the police to put on rodeos and do other bicycle safety education.
Right, and that's something that one of the many ways that I know the police and FAB work together, and we certainly want to encourage that. We've only got a minute left. I wanted to ask about trail maintenance, because it's something I've talked about for the last few years. Some of our trails are not in very good shape.
No, they aren't. And as you know, there's almost no money for trail maintenance. And we've advocated for better maintenance. And we hope, I know that the county has done an assessment of the trails, and the needs are tremendous. And we just hope that the county can start devoting some more resources to that maintenance. One good thing related to that is VDOT did repair the Fairfax County Parkway Trail last summer, the northern half, and that was a huge plus.
Right, and I know we're going to put some signage on that trail to make it easier for people to navigate. So on that good news note, we're going to wrap it up, and I want to thank Bruce and Lieutenant Ivansick for joining me today to help educate us on the large bicycling community here in Fairfax and how we can all share our roads and trails in a safe and lawful way. If you'd like to contact FAB, their website is www.fabb-bikes.org. I hope you've enjoyed this segment of Braddock Neighborhood News. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or other needs, please contact my office at 703-425-9300 or email braddock@fairfaxcounty.gov. Tune in next month for another edition, and please remember to look for ways to volunteer. Your community needs you.